Adrian Blackwood lived in a world where money was power, and power was everything. From penthouses in Manhattan to yachts that could host a small army, his life was meticulously curated for success and superiority. Surrounded by friends who were as arrogant and wealthy as he was, he thrived on bets that proved his dominance. One evening, over rare whiskey and crystal glasses, a question arose: who could turn the unlikeliest woman into someone society would envy? The group laughed, knowing Adrian's history of conquest. Adrian's lips curved into a smug smile. "I'll do it. I'll marry the girl nobody believes in, and in 1 year, prove she can't measure up. $5 million says I'm right." The table erupted into cheers, clinking glasses echoing through the private lounge. Adrian didn't see it as cruelty, it was sport, a game where he always won. Lila Moore wasn't wealthy or glamorous, but she carried a quiet dignity. At 23, she worked long hours at a local bookstore, lived modestly, and nurtured dreams that seemed impossible. She was often teased for her size, called the girl no one would notice, but she had intelligence, humor, and a kindness that drew the rare, meaningful friendships. One ordinary morning, she was summoned to a mysterious meeting, expecting a routine contract signing for a local project. Instead, she met Adrian Blackwood. He was dazzling, infuriating, and intimidating all at once. When he proposed marriage, not out of love but as part of a bet, her first instinct was anger, followed by disbelief. Why her? And why would she agree? The offer was absurd, almost comical, but desperate circumstances in her life made her pause, even consider it. The proposal was anything but romantic. Adrian laid out the terms with clinical precision, almost like a lawyer reading a contract. "Marry me for a year. I'll bet $5 million with my friends that you won't fit the world I live in. You'll have every luxury, every resource, but ultimately, I'm testing you." Lila's initial indignation was palpable. She wanted to laugh, cry, scream, everything all at once. But she also saw opportunity. A chance to change her life materially and, perhaps, prove them wrong. After long deliberation, she agreed, cautiously stepping into a world where she was both trophy and test. Walking into Adrian's mansion was like stepping into another universe. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, marble floors stretched endlessly, and walls were adorned with priceless art. Lila felt small, unworthy, exposed, but Adrian watched her with an analytical gaze, curious about how she would adapt. His friends mocked her behind closed doors, whispering bets on how long she would last. Lila, however, wasn't broken. She explored the mansion quietly, discovering tiny acts of kindness. Adrian had left her favorite books in the library and a note that simply said, "Welcome home." Small as it was, it unsettled her, hinting at a man far more complicated than his arrogance suggested. The first formal gathering in the mansion tested her resolve. Adrian's friends, tall, sleek, and judgmental, exchanged cruel jokes. Lila's nervous laughter and awkward attempts at conversation made her feel painfully exposed. Yet, instead of retreating, she focused on observing, learning, and silently strategizing. Adrian, amused at first, began to notice her resilience, her unwillingness to completely crumble under ridicule. Something unfamiliar stirred in him, a flicker of admiration masked by his usual smirk. Determined not to appear weak, Lila threw herself into Adrian's world. She took lessons in etiquette, began exercising, experimented with fashion, and tried to refine her image. Each attempt came with awkward failures, wardrobe malfunctions, mispronounced names at galas, fainting under pressure. Adrian initially saw this as confirmation of his bet, but slowly, he began to notice tiny sparks of determination. The woman wasn't just trying, she was adapting, learning, refusing to be mocked silently. A charity gala brought the first dramatic turning point. Lila was mocked by a socialite who commented on her weight, expecting tears. Instead, Lila delivered a sharp, witty response that stunned the room into silence. Adrian watched, stunned. He had never anticipated courage like this, humor paired with dignity. Respect began to creep in, tinged with a confusing attraction. The game was starting to feel different, less about winning a bet and more about witnessing a force he had underestimated. In quiet moments, Adrian discovered Lila's hidden talents. She had a mind for business, a flair for design, and a depth of empathy rare in his world. He was shocked, not just at her intelligence, but at how completely he had misjudged her. Every interaction revealed new layers, each one dismantling his arrogance piece by piece. Lila began to suspect his initial intentions, yet she also noticed glimpses of vulnerability in him, something rare for a man like Adrian. Late-night talks over tea, shared laughter in the kitchen, even quiet walks around the mansion grounds slowly built a fragile bond. Adrian's cold arrogance cracked further, and Lila found herself enjoying moments with him without thinking of the bet. They began to share stories, regrets, and dreams. The walls between them started to erode, leaving something raw and real. Their relationship, initially transactional and cruelly experimental, began to transform into something far more profound. Adrian realized he was experiencing feelings he didn't understand. Lila's laughter, intelligence, and courage began to dominate his thoughts. He noticed the way she smiled at strangers, the way she cared for animals, the way her voice could shift a tense moment into laughter. Adrian's friends noticed the change too, mocking him gently but clearly seeing his growing infatuation. Lila, meanwhile, began sensing that he was no longer playing the game he had started, though she remained cautious. Lila's transformation accelerated, but not for Adrian. She focused on herself, her health, her confidence, her style. She experimented with clothing that highlighted her strengths, practiced speaking with authority, and cultivated a poise that drew admiration naturally. Slowly, the world began to notice, not as a product of Adrian's wealth, but as a woman who had claimed herself. Adrian watched, fascinated, as his bet seemed to collapse in ways he hadn't anticipated. At a grand event, Lila appeared radiant. She was confident, poised, breathtaking. Adrian's jaw dropped, not from arrogance or pride, but from the sheer power and beauty she now exuded. His friends gawked, whispers spread. For the first time, Adrian realized that the bet wasn't about changing her, it was about seeing someone transform in ways he could never have imagined. His feelings, long buried under smugness, surged unexpectedly. Disaster struck when Lila discovered the truth about the bet. Heartbroken and furious, she confronted Adrian. Her tears burned with betrayal, her voice quivering yet firm. Adrian, now fully humbled, struggled to find the words. He confessed that his feelings had changed, that he no longer saw her as a project or experiment, but as the woman he genuinely loved. Lila, skeptical, demanded proof, not wealth, not gifts, but sincerity and devotion. Adrian embarked on a mission of redemption. He listened, apologized, and demonstrated that his love was real. He took risks for her, showed vulnerability, and proved that his feelings were not tied to a bet. Slowly, Lila began to see the change, testing his sincerity with small challenges and observing whether his actions matched his words. Their bond, once fragile and transactional, began to blossom into mutual respect and love. Finally, Lila's transformation was complete. Not merely in appearance, but in spirit. She was confident, empowered, radiant. Adrian had lost the $5 million bet, but gained something priceless, a woman who challenged, inspired, and loved him unconditionally. The world that had mocked her now admired her. The billionaire had bet on weakness and lost, only to discover that strength, courage, and love could never be wagered or bought. In the end, both had changed, the game was over, but the transformation and love were just beginning.